Donald Trump's second presidency is a failure. The deep state has already won. How can you possibly say that? Trump has been president for less than 6 months. Well, Milton Friedman famously pointed out that any president has about 6 months to make any real structural changes, and then the swamp takes over and everything becomes a morass, in which nothing gets done. When DOGE came out with their USAID findings, their Social Security findings, and the crazy government mine for federal workers' retirement information, I was very optimistic. And the fact that there were mass firings at the CIA and then there were mass firings at the IRS made me even more optimistic. In fact, in another video, I said that Trump had the chance to be the greatest president in the last 100 years, even more successful than Reagan. But instead of capitalizing on DOGE's initial success and the shock value of how absurd the federal government is, Trump squandered the opportunity. The first sign that things were going off the rails was Pam Bondi's disastrous release of the Epstein client list. But I thought and hoped that this was just a hiccup. The fact that Trump has not ended the Ukraine-Russia war is another bad sign. He should have been able to end this war like he said he would do before he even took office. Then there was the promise to audit Fort Knox. What the hell happened to that? Then Trump supported a continuing resolution, which left federal spending levels at the same level as Biden. How is that cleaning up the deep state? On top of that, Trump threatened to primary Thomas Massie for not supporting the continuing resolution. Massie is one of the most principled representatives in the whole U.S. Congress. That was the canary in the coal mine, that the deep state had won. Just to cement that the deep state had won, Trump, who had promised to cut defense spending in half and to not be a war president, proudly announced that they had just passed a $1 trillion defense budget.
Great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military.
Trump destroyed all his momentum by shifting his focus to tariffs, which just proved he was economically illiterate and didn't prove his 4D chess skills at all. It does show that he's distracted with nonsense, and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have been a huge disappointment. Not a single criminal indictment has been brought against the deep state. Sycophants tell us to be patient, but there was no need to do any investigation to start the prosecutions of Anthony Fauci for lying to Congress, or for Hillary Clinton for obstruction of justice and lying to Congress, or Louis Lerner, the former head of the IRS who lied to Congress and also failed to comply with subpoenas, or Merrick Garland, who failed to comply with multiple subpoenas, and Jake Tapper, who clearly lied to Congress, or Christopher Wray, who failed to comply with a number of subpoenas and lied to Congress. And the same thing can be said about Jim Comey, John Brennan, and all the people associated with CISA, and the censoring of the American people. All these rich targets and not a single indictment. All these people should be charged with RICO as well, because this was clearly a conspiracy against the American people. It's easy to criticize, but what should Trump be doing? Well, he should be taking the advice of Javier Milei, not taking the gradualist approach, and prosecuting the traitors. Number one is he should cut the federal budget by $2 trillion on the very first day. He could have done this by executive order, like Javier Milei did. Then he'd have a certain amount of time to get the lazy, two-faced Republican rhinos to actually pass a budget that cut the federal budget, instead of this insane continuing resolution bullshit. He should eliminate the Federal Reserve, which is a source of funds for the evil deep state, and a Marxist organization which has caused huge income inequality by the Cantillon effect, which allows those people closest to the money printer to get rich as parasites off the backs of everyone else. He also should have taken another cue from Milley and cut 11 of the 15 cabinet-level positions. The 11 cabinet-level positions that should be cut include the Secretary of Interior, the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, which should be part of the Defense Department, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. All of these are clearly unconstitutional and a waste of money. This would go a long way to saving the $2 trillion, and all the regulations associated with these secretaries should also be eliminated. There are a number of so-called independent agencies, which are clearly unconstitutional and which should also be cut. Plus, the unconstitutional and traitorous CIA, NSA, FBI, and ATF should all be eliminated. World War II ended 80 years ago, and we should get rid of all the overseas bases, which are left over mainly from World War II. They're a waste of money, and they do not project power, they project weakness. They undermine the economic power and goodwill of the United States. Trump could also save a bunch of money by eliminating all the civilian DoD workers and 2/3 of the military personnel. We have a completely bloated Defense Department, which is unable to pass a simple audit. Trump should also eliminate the Patriot Act, which was clearly unconstitutional and the deep state's wet dream. To really jumpstart the economy, Trump should eliminate the SEC and all the securities laws such as Sarbanes-Oxley, which inhibit capital formation and empower the wolves on Wall Street at the expense of ordinary people. These reforms would free up our capital markets. To supercharge our economy, we need to reform our patent laws, which were destroyed by Clinton, George Bush II, and Obama. The present patent laws are completely useless for independent inventors and small companies. Our present patent laws are completely dysfunctional and just a play toy for big corporations and Wall Street. In addition, our recent experience with COVID shows that all licensing boards, even medical licensing boards, should be eliminated. They're political and they are a violation of the Commerce Clause. All insurance regulatory agencies should be immediately declared void as a violation of the Commerce Clause. All they do is restrict competition and increase the cost and empower bureaucrats. Of course, Trump's sycophants will say Trump is better than Kamala Harris would have been, or Biden. Yep, he is. But that's a meaningless standard if we're trying to eliminate the deep state, which was one of Trump's talking points over and over, a very non-specific promise, which is typical of conservatives, who brag that they're not ideological. Instead, they're pragmatic, taking one issue at a time. But as Milley said, you need to use a chainsaw, not a scalpel. You need to eliminate all these agencies, not reform them. All of Trump's changes will be undone in very short order. All the changes that were made under Reagan and Thatcher were undone in less than a decade. We should also pass a law that allows private citizens to sue bureaucrats and government agencies that violate their constitutional rights, or who fail to follow the law. This law should include monetary compensation, and not only civil penalties but criminal penalties for the people responsible in the government. This is the minimum we need in order to keep the deep state in check. Just like we need to have guns in order to protect our rights, we need to have power in the courts to actually sue these deep state traitors. Unfortunately, I doubt any of this will happen because Republicans and Trump describe themselves as conservatives, and conservatives are proud that they have no philosophy. The only value they have is the value to conserve. The United States was built on the radical ideas of John Locke. It was not a conservative reformation, as Edmund Burke and conservatives would like you to think. It's time to throw out the conservatives and put in people who are serious about reforming and get us back to a state of freedom. We want a president who wants to make us the freest country in the world, like Javier Milei wants to do in Argentina, and wants to make us the richest country in the world. Long live freedom, damn it.